And we are live. Welcome, everyone. Apologies for the short delay. We're just trying to sort out a small technical issue. My good friend Thunderous, it seems he's set up has a small problem with StreamYard, but let's hope that doesn't become an issue. So we're here today to discuss the issues in the UK. The UK seems like a powder keg, but this also seems to be like a canary in the coal mine for the issues that are happening across Europe and will probably also happen in the UK. And I'm here with Francis Boole and, of course, the Thunderous One. So, yeah, guys, welcome. So, I'll start with Francis. Welcome. How are you? Good to have you back.
Thank you so much, brother. I've been it's been all right, but situation in the UK has not been, in all honesty, as you said. Um, Things have taken for the worst in regards to politically and also socially. Um, there's a lot of people who are riled up, and hence why I am here to discuss with you, brother, of what can be done and how things are going to get worse and how if something doesn't change, what is the next step?
Yeah, not true. I mean, this is not necessarily a political channel, although Islam is a political issue. And also, as Christians, we're affected by politics, and I think we should try to affect politics for the better. And in fact, as we've seen in the Olympics, the lack of Christianity is affecting society and culture
Yeah.
for the negative. And of course, culture is downstream from, well, politics is downstream from culture, but culture is downstream from religion. And I think we need to bring back some sanity. Thunderous, how are you doing? Thunderous, are you there? Cannot hear you right now. All right, so Thunderous, just jump in whenever you can, whenever you, because I can hear you typing, I think. So, yeah. So, any announcements you want to make, Francis? I know that your personal situation is changing right now. So, do you want to make a small announcement to the audience regarding your.
I'm here, but it's very intermittent for me.
We can hear you fine. Please go ahead, Thunderous.
I think I'm having a tech issue. The line is too intermittent. Oh, if you can hear me fine, then that's okay. You're intermittent for me. But yeah, I would agree with Francis at the moment. I think the United Kingdom now has got to a certain red line. This red line has probably been anticipated, in my estimation, since 1989. We've been incrementally getting to this point, and I say from 1989, as that was the catalyst, in my opinion, when the Salman Rushdie affairs took place and the Islamic presence as a unity, as a united force, made itself known.
Yeah, that's a really very insightful point because that was a watershed moment for, I think, the world.
It
The
wasn't.
Salman.
Uh,
Yeah.
we are now is a very dangerous, precarious situation.
All right. Tell me, Thunderous, what did the Thunderous Rushdie event mean for you, and what made you decide that this is a moment that is a foretelling of the future?
I think up until the Salman Rushdie affair, Islam was just probably the nominal religion or that was in the community. People didn't know much about it, but the presence of the Asian community was there. It was just another religion of the brown skinned people. Some were Sikh, some were Hindu, some were Muslim. But when Salman Rushdie came out, and then the fatwa was
You've just broken up there now.
by Iran for the execution, not just locally, but nationally and indeed internationally. And that's when, if you like, in this country was when I first saw with my own eyes a protest that started with book burning. Now, being brought up in the Islamic community, their reaction came as no surprise because their mentality is as such. But I think it's the first time that England and Europe, and by extension, the rest of the world that wasn't exposed to this mindset of Islam, became known.
That's really, really insightful. That's very interesting to reach that far back Incredible. Francis, I saw you nodding your head. Do you want to add your thoughts on that?
But yeah, I
I
think
Go ahead, Francis. We'll try and
as
catch
well,
Thunderous back.
I can just
Sure.
Sunni, the Shia, the Ahmadiyya, and the other various varieties of Islam were seen having a lot of infighting. And I often liken it because I'm 56 years old and grew up in the 80s and 90s. I recall distinctively the football hooligans of United Kingdom at the time. The Chelsea will fight Tottenham, the Tottenham will fight the Arsenal, Millwall will fight West Ham, and everybody will go fight Man United. However, come an England game, the England soccer hooligan fans united, and that's where, in my opinion, is how Islam is. They have a lot of infighting.
You just dropped out at a critical moment, Thunderous.
You attack
Um,
Islam, they will unite. More
ah,
belligerence.
well, I mean, but that's something that's unfortunately par for the course. We have to deal with that because at some point Europeans have to unite. At some point, Brits have to unite, and they will just have to accept the fact that this is going to cause conflict. Francis, your thoughts as you're nodding there?
um Islam always had infighting to begin with. Like, if I take the situation in Middle East and even in Pakistan, there's certain areas that Shias cannot go to. With Sunni just go and just destroy whatever they and do whatever they feel like, and that's been such a norm in societies that I've seen growing up. But also seeing now that they can they can unite because they're now collectively being attacked. I can see I sense that's happening already because I think since uh, probably 9/11, people celebrating on the streets, there was no regard for who's Shia, who's Sunni, who's Ahmadi. It was all collective celebration. So in the destruction of the other, they come and celebrate together. But there is in-house fighting. But then I see what's happening in UK right now when this extreme what do you call this extreme group that is riling people up now and saying like, look, they're coming for us. Now we need to take an action against them. But what's happening is that the politics itself has involved and taken the side of Islam now. So now people who are we seen writing across or trying to showcase or protest, what the government has now done is to label them all as far right thugs. So it's like they've just taken that and they're like, okay, you know what? We don't care what you think of us. So I'm seeing very extreme perspectives on both sides. But all I have to say is that sadly, one has to unite against the evil, and the evil will not stop until something is being done about it. Because live and let live is too far gone, especially in the Western society. Because in the Eastern society, if this was happening, some evil was taking place, there would have been something done about it immediately within the Islamic community itself. Like if Shia does something wrong, if Ahmadi does something wrong, the Sunnis will completely take hold of the situation more quicker than anything. So I'm like, but the West is just giving them leeway constantly. So I'm like, it's double standards that I'm watching right now.
So this is why the UK government has now been relabeled. Well, the new prime minister is called two-tier care,
Oh
and this
yes.
does seem highly appropriate. I mean, his speech. For instance, they're blaming the EDL, which has been disbanded for 10 years,
Hmm.
and they're blaming Tommy Robinson. Now, he just led two major marches in the UK in London.
Yeah.
Both of those were extremely peaceful. They were very large, very peaceful. There were all of these events. There were these stabbings. There were all these young girls. An attack on 10 young girls. There, three of them whom sadly are no longer with us, and there were no riots by Brits. There were the Leeds riots. The police ran away. They allowed these rioters to continue. There were
Yeah.
these other issues. There was the Manchester airport issue, where, of course, there was first a video that was used to create the false impression that the police just, for no reason, kicked a man on the ground without stopping to ask, how did the guy get on the ground? What was he doing there in the first place? And then it turns out that he and his friends attacked 5 police officers, broke the nose of a female police officer, and you've got, this very slanted media, and these guys were allowed to walk free. They're on bail. They're out in public, even though they attacked 5 armed officers. And then, of course, after the murder of these girls by a migrant, you've got the UK population that has risen up, these patriots who've risen up, and of course, they were labeled immediately far right. These are concerned citizens. The government was incredibly tone deaf, and you've got now, the government made the statement that they would be policed with force, they would be prosecuted, they will be tracked and traced and found, and they will go through the court system and they will be charged and they will suffer punishment. Whereas none of this, and he said, we will protect the Muslims, we'll protect the mosques. So this is incredible. You had Muslims rioting, turning over police cars, burning police cars, hurting police, chasing the police out of the area, burning buses. And you've got the British government turning a blind eye to that, not even saying a word about that, and then blaming, let's not to put too fine a point on it, but blaming white people and calling them all the far right extremists for being concerned for their safety and their culture. Yes, Thunderous?
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit of history there, and I'd like to sort of mention a few things that have happened this year, because it's very easy to say, well, it was the Manchester airport and maybe the 3 girls that got stabbed via immigration. First of all, this country has a severe immigration problem, as the rest of Europe does, but within England, it's particularly more. I can say it's more intense. Because when migrants go to other countries, they're being allowed a free pass to go all the way to France, and then France are basically waving their hands, allowing them the migrants to get on boats and come over to England. So we're getting basically the riffraff for us coming via Europe. That being said, one has to bear in mind certain incidents that have led to this where we are now. If we just look at this year, we had an incident in a London school where teachers were threatened. The school had to close down for a while because a Muslim girl wanted to have her own prayer room, okay, and it was denied because the criteria of being a student in that school, I think it's called the Michaela School, which has high markings, but it was denied because it's a free quality school, and the problem was the Muslims, guess what, they kicked up. Then we had the situation in Bangladesh where nepotism was taking place, and we had riots in the UK. Like, what happens in Bangladesh has got nothing to do with England, yet Bengali Muslims decided to protest. Then we have the situation where India and Pakistan, there was a cricket issue. I think England or India, I don't know which team won, but we had riots and protests in Leicester between Muslims and Indians. Now, that's unique because you never hear of Sikhs or Indians getting involved in any kind of belligerent, violent protest. And then when you on other things, like the soldier that was stabbed, that apologized to the local imam. You had one teacher that made a comment about Muhammad and he's now gone into hiding. So we're not looking at 1 or 2 isolated incidents, and suffice it to say I could mention more, but this is a pattern developing. People are not stupid, and we're made in God's image, Genesis 1:26. So our intellect can take in information and we can process it, and after a while we see patterns, and what we're seeing is a pattern of protection given to a certain demographic. Now, the latest buzz phrase at the moment is that if you say anything against Islam, or you're far right, that's come off the back of that you're going to use if you say anything that goes against the narrative of the government. So if you've got any comments about transphobia, you're far right. If you've got anything about a problem with homosexuality, you're far right. You say anything about Islam, then you're Islamophobic, then you're far right. Now, Islamophobia is having its definition changed in the United Kingdom. I think it's Michael Gove that's doing that. But what's going to happen if Islamophobia then becomes a hate crime?
Well, look, your police
That means
already
you can't
is partial. I mean, UK police is already highly politicized and very partial. For instance, they took the knee for BLM, which means that they supported the BLM. They painted their cars for pride, they danced in the street for pride, they changed their uniforms for pride, which means they supported pride. They've stood back, they've given friendly advice, and they've given a free pass to Muslim riots and to Muslim violence, and in fact, to the rape of over 1 million British girls. They stood back for that. Now when the Brits voice protest against these issues, now they've labeled these as the far right and they've promised to prosecute them and protect Muslims. So you've got a police force that is in the pocket of these migrants. They have a preference for outsiders. Any comment, Francis?
You encapsulate all of it brilliantly, because the way the Keir Starmer, as in the beginning you said, has now said that the police there'll be more protection for the mosques. So for that very thing, if churches can be vandalized around Europe, basically around the globe now, to be honest with you, churches can be vandalized in the UK. People can spread around whatever they do, whatever they feel like, but that's freedom of speech. That's freedom of expression. But then the synagogues were being attacked by the Muslims. Muslims are going outside Jewish homes in Jewish areas and calling all those nasty things, which I'm not going to say it again, because I think everybody might have seen the videos. So Keir Starmer will protect the mosques, but what about the Jews and the Christians then, if they get sort of in this sort of a turmoil? So what standard is he setting for a lot of other different groups? So you were saying, okay,
well, we've
the
seen
Muslims.
the UK police arrest Christian street preachers.
Yes, exactly.
They've arrested women who stood quietly praying across the street away from abortion centers. They've arrested them. Whereas you've had Muslims causing violence, and of course they've been allowed to go because, and they've
also arrested people for using the wrong gender pronoun.
For mean tweets, in the name of social cohesion. But
exactly.
I mean, we need to start an organization called Black People from Africa and Integrated Pakistanis for white people from Europe and British people. What do you think? That would be BPFA, Black People from Africa, BPFA IP, Integrated Pakistan IP, BPFA IP, FB for British values, FBV, and AWE and white Europeans. So we can call it the FBAAPIVQ. It should sound really good once I write it out. What do you guys think?
That sound like the alphabet group. I call them Skittles. So that sounded very.
I have a question because someone mentioned it. I mean, you've got one guy from Africa and two integrated Pakistanis, educated, both Christian. What makes you stand up for British values? Francis, I'll start with you. What makes you stand up for British values as opposed to Muslim values or foreign values? Why do you defend British culture, Western culture, Christian culture?
I think the British culture allows people to, because it's so ingrained in the value of dignity alongside regard for the other person. So when I see the British value, the true British values that I've listened and I've heard and I've read the laws about, in regards to upholding every single value of an individual, but also making sure that equal treatment is there too, and then also alongside making sure that the freedom of protest, the freedom of speaking out against something is, I can't say it's as as much of a huge right as in America, but in UK we still have a democratic process where we can speak out against something wrong. But when you are casted down, when you're told that no, you cannot speak like this, but these people can, So these are going against the British values that I know of. I see the mannerisms. The mannerism is like being polite, but also making sure you put your point of view across too, without without sounding condescending. I've seen those sort of values, and that's what growing up over here, making
I mean,
sure
would
that
you prefer to
integration.
live in third world culture or in British culture?
Sorry.
Would you prefer to live in third world culture or British culture?
British culture.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not in a third world culture, because I come from a third world culture. So
Me too. The further I can get away from it, the better. Thunderous,
exactly.
your thoughts? Welcome, Thunderous. Your thoughts?
Sorry, one
You're gonna have to
moment.
kill your mic somewhere, Thunderous. Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. We can hear you
Is
now.
it hopefully that's better. So my thoughts are where we are now in all of this is language. First of all, I don't see it by accident. I see everything that's happening at the moment is by design, very deliberate, very organized. I don't think it's a coincidence. The world has 1400 years of history just looking at Islam and how it behaves. And I doubt very much that people making decisions in high places are making decisions out of ignorance. It seems to be, in my opinion, the reaction that they want is the reaction that they're getting. So I don't see this as accidents, and I think that the indigenous are deliberately being maligned, unsettled via immigration and via Islam. Because for me, there's a strategy or an end game agenda. I think when we're having these kinds of discussions and we're looking at it from the biblical narrative, the Bible has to be taken into consideration as well. And there are certain things that, from an eschatological point of view, that we're looking forward to, but also there is a ruling force over the planet at the moment. We know that from Matthew chapter chapter 4. We know that from 2 Corinthians 4:4, 1 John 5:19, or Revelation 12:9. So there is other things to consider, and I don't think things that are happening in the world are happening as a chaos. I think they're happening very deliberately, because I don't see it as a coincidence that
No, I understand that. I mean, look, we know that you've got socialists who hate the West, who have a nihilistic vision of the future, who are inspired by Marx. Marx was a Satanist. Marx sold his soul to Satan. Marx wanted to destroy everything that exists. Marx wanted to tear and burn everything down, and from the ashes supposedly build a utopia. And of course, this means the destruction of everything that is Christian and everything that is Western. So you've got that. I mean, I don't want to discuss issues above my pay grade, like what color Toyota Corolla God drives right now, but I'd like us from a more practical point of view, because we know that this is, I think all of it is anti-Christian, and I think deliberately so. The opening ceremony of the Olympics was a deliberate slap in the face,
yeah.
and so I think this much is true. And I mean, how do we reclaim the culture? I mean, why is it that we've got three non-white guys that are discussing Western culture? I mean, because I stand for Western culture. Western culture is Christian culture. I think we need to remember this. We need to understand that Western culture is not based on the atheistic utopia. Atheism is just the partner of socialism. It's the other side of the coin, and in fact, atheism is one of the major causes of the moral rot that we see today. It's created the moral vacuum that was filled by Islam. You've got Christianity that built the culture that we live in. You've got those moral values that established the justice system that we have today. And any thoughts about how do we recover this? Because we're seeing now people want those values back. And what is the British culture? That question was asked earlier. And I think British culture has not changed, European culture has not changed, nor has American culture. And I want to stress Western culture is superior. Western culture, Christian culture, is superior to other cultures. If I talk about African culture, it is an inferior culture. I'll just be blunt, and people can dislike me for that if they choose. But why do you think, Thunderous, Western culture is superior, and it's reasserting itself. People are seeing other cultures that are inferior, and just your thought on that.
I think if you look at English culture, um, I think many of the rules that it has are predicated on Christian values in the Bible. If I so, for instance, the scripture in Corinthians talks about when you speak to the Jew, become as a Jew; to the Greek as a Greek; to the man without law, because the man without law, though you're under law towards God. The thing is with English culture is wherever English culture goes, it tries to adapt to the community of the environment that it's going to visit. So if you've got an English people going to certain countries and cultures, they will try and adapt to those cultures, whether they're temporary aliens there or whether they're for any particular period of time. The problem you have with other cultures is when they come to England or Europe, they bring their culture with them, and they're not going to remove, they're not going to change. They become adamant and dogmatic about their attitude. This is how we do it in Africa, so this is how we're going to be doing it here. This is how we do it in Pakistan, so this is how we're going to be doing it here. They make no exception. Or if you like, cooperation, which is in order to allow themselves to integrate.
But isn't
They
part of that Western liberals who insist that we have no culture, we have horrible culture, and we can't force these lovely third worlders to integrate and adapt to new cultures? In fact, we have to lower the educational standards to allow them to get degrees with their 30% pass because, you know, these people are just not capable and they're not racist whatsoever.
Well, you say that. I mean, the same thing could be allowing people into the police force and allowing people to become doctors and allowing people to become firemen as well. So it's never ending when you're involving DEI in lowering standards. You start lowering the standards. In effect, what you're doing is you're lowering the quality, and that's in effect what we're seeing. We're seeing a lower quality above the spectrum in every facet of English culture at the moment.
Yeah. When I passed school, I believe I had to have 78% to get a proper pass back when I was at school. Now, you've got the issue in South Africa where, because of lowering the standards to allow blacks to get their degrees to become engineers, doctors, and lawyers, you can now pass with 30, maybe even 25%, and you now have your engineer, you're a doctor, and this is simply just the way things are done because blacks are just as good as anyone else, and we only have to drop the standards to 30% to allow them to pass their maths exam.
But then
Yeah.
Why were Oxford and Cambridge the most famous universities that other countries wanted to sell their children to?
Yeah, well, yeah, but those standards are racist now. Francis, your thoughts?
When you have when you have Christians coming from different countries to UK who I've met so far, from Egypt, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, from India, all of them come to a country like the West, supposedly in UK, in my case, London. All of them tend to integrate. All of them share the same values as many Western Christians do. Of course, there'll be cultural differences in regards to their thinking mindset and stuff, but they still tend to integrate. So that shows a lot of differences, right? So these people can integrate. But then when these Christians come over here and they see the West being so extremely over the top nice to people who hate them, because they believe in the value that, like, love thy neighbor as you love yourself, but they take it to the point where it's detrimental for the very other person. So supposedly they say love thy neighbor as you love yourself, and they take that value, so they start caring and they start praying for them. But what's happening is you're also not speaking for the person who's being harmed. So that is something that I'm seeing as well, and those people see too. So as an immigrant myself, I tried integrating. I tried
Yeah.
doing all these things, and and we do have immigrants who make a difference in this country. But on the very point that they're lowering the standards of the education, that is something I'm seeing too. Because if we see CQC, before working as a care worker, care quality commission, you need to make notes, you need to know how to administer medication, you need to know how to care, and first aid, everything else. Nowadays, you can just do a day's worth of training and you're fine. Before, everything was a lot different. Like, you needed at least minimum 15 to 20 days to be mentally prepared of what the care system is in this country. Now, a 1 day or 2 day course, and then you're fine to go and care for someone, whether they're autistic, nonverbal, or whether they are, dyslexic, or whether they are unwell, or whether it's old age home. There's no proper training anymore.
So you've got
So
incompetence caused by DEI, by
exactly,
look, you've got the socialist view of love thy neighbor, which is allow your neighbor to shoot up on the street, allow your neighbor to commit crime, allow your neighbor to walk from the courts, allow your neighbor to bypass the law entirely, and allow him
yes,
to steal up to $950 worth of goods without charge, right? So you've
exactly,
got this overt focus on compassion without focusing on the justice of God, because God
yeah,
may be compassionate, God may be love, but God is also just, and there is an element of justice. You said something that was very interesting, something I have said to my colleagues, I've said to many, and Thunderous, I'll let you take the first stab at it, then I'll come back to Francis and then add my own thoughts. Francis said that you're allowing in people who hate you. Now, I have told Polish people here, you need to understand, and for the audience, please understand, I come from Africa. I come from the third world. Yes, I can speak proper English. I have all my own front teeth. And yes, I do bathe on a regular basis, at least once a week. However, that said, I may have one foot in the first world, but I was certainly born in the third world. I have seen it, I grew up in it, and I've told people, black people, by and large, hate you. And you do not allow people in your house that hate you. Now, they may not say so to your face, but you're seeing that the masks are coming off and they're starting to show just how much they hate you. And as soon as they have a dominant role, they will sideline you and they will persecute you. So, Thunderous, Francis said that these people hate white people. And this is true. I've said it over and over. Now, this doesn't mean that, of course, we have to qualify. Well, not everyone does, yeah, but enough of them do. Far more than enough of them do. And it's enough to be destructive, it's enough to be toxic, it's enough to sway politics, and it's enough to harm your families. Your thoughts, Thunderous?
Well, I think we've had this discussion before, probably many years ago, Lloyd, where I revealed from my own experience being brought up in the Muslim community how much they hate white people. So that's nothing new for me to hear. As far as allowing them to come into the country, allowing your enemy to come in and to overtake certain communities and areas and cause the disruption that they do, as I said, and I reiterate, for me personally, with my mindset, I see this as quite deliberate. Work into a strategy, work into an end game. That's where I'm at with it. What the end game is, we'll see it when it arrives, I guess. But I don't see this as being incidental or out of stupidity or naivety. For me, there's a strategy behind it.
It's too systematic, too organized.
Exactly. To organize, they know the enemy that they're taking on. There's a history there. Even if you just go back to what the comments I made about 1989 and the satanic verses, that is evidence that you can look back in history to, and then see the history of the United Kingdom and Europe as Islam has moved forward and got more and more emboldened. Now, you and I have discussed many times about Islam. Just as a counter question to what you've just asked me, I would like to ask you then, from the Muslim point of view, and Francis brought up the point about the mosques getting protected, and I think it's going to be protected to the tune of 168 million. When you're seeing rioters being asked by the police to put their weapons down, not to get arrested, but return
Leave your weapons at the mosque.
Yes, leave your weapons at the mosque. Not even being arrested for it. Yeah, if I was to carry a weapon, I'd be arrested. When you're seeing police running away from the Muslim community, when you're seeing Muslims outside police stations protesting over a situation that they probably knew more about than what the press did at the time. From a Muslim point of view, who do you think is giving them the victory?
Allah is giving them the victory. It's giving them control.
So what would that do to the Muslim mindset?
Embolden them.
There's the point.
And of course, the police don't prosecute, so they're further emboldened. And the enemies, the native Brits who are suffering, those are the ones that the government cracks down on. They don't crack down on the perpetrators. They crack down on the Brits for noticing the problem or for reacting to the problem. This is attacking the symptom, not dealing with the cause, because they know you can arrest a 73-year-old British granny with a pacemaker because she's not going to attack you. Whereas you arrest one of those Muslim rioters, those jihadis, and of course the 1,000 of them will be destroying the police station tomorrow.
And I think as well with the just on the comments about the 73-year-old woman, I think from the legal point of view, in order to set up the narrative of the far right, they've got to make arrests. So when you start making arrests of people who you're going to deem as far right, the numbers look spectacular as far as the media are concerned as well. So
yes,
it
at Downing Street they arrested 110 plus Brits who were protesting the murder of these 3 young girls, of these little girls. But at in Leeds, they arrested, what, 11 people?
Yeah.
Over a week? You're right.
So yet again, it strengthens the narrative, which is where I'm thinking there must be an end game strategy in this.
Francis, your thoughts?
I still remember the day before when I went to Downing Street just to peacefully demonstrate in regards to showcase that we are here and we disagree with all these things that you guys are doing. And it was a peaceful demonstration. There was no rioting. There was no pillaging. There was no stuff being chucked around. So when the next day, when the riots, when people were getting arrested, 111 people were arrested to be in total. And all they did was take pictures of those people hours prior, and they gathered them all, and they were all arrested. Especially the ones that they saw at demonstration as well. They got arrested. All I'm seeing is literally the double standards, because when in Leeds, the police can run away from people rioting from the Roma Gypsy community because the social services take their children away, and they showed that this is what we will do if you do something like this to us. But then the very same thing is done because 3 little girls were unfortunately eliminated by someone. This is what happens. That we will not allow you to protest or demonstrate your issues because somehow you are upholding a different standard. But these immigrants who can come in and they can riot, they can loot, they can burn cars, they can burn buses, and that's fine. So the standard you're setting for the people, for the native Brits, and for the immigrants, I don't think they're realizing this is going to turn into a huge civil war, to be honest with you. And the second thing I want to bring up is a woman who they arrested, and the people they arrested, they put them in jail for 2 days, and then freed them without a charge. That also happened.
No charge.
And then there was no charge, so they just put them in jail for 2 days, and then they let them go without any charge. And then the third thing I would have to say is in regards to now the Muslim Defense League has lifted up. So Muslim Defense League throwing stuff around all over Twitter. There's videos of them. They've
to protect their mosques from the dangerous far right that the government has identified.
Exactly, but those people are not showcasing themselves wherever they can. They're hiding their faces. But Twitter is already showing what are these people doing, but media has not even spoken about this. The Prime Minister has not been aware about this. What's happening? So this is why I think there's an issue that I see with immigrants having so much more rights, to be honest with you, than the native Brits itself. So me as an immigrant, if I can have more rights than the native, I don't think they're setting up a good example. And that's why I'm scared for the immigrants who also look like me and like us, who can also be labeled by some thuggish person who does not know any different. So that is also another backlash that I'm seeing too that's coming, because people...
Yeah, this feels like white working class Brits are being turned into dhimmis.
Yes, basically. You do not say anything. Muslims are peaceful people. We're very loving. Well, when you mention the hate stems from their religion itself. When it talks about hating the person, disliking the person, if you speak sweet from their mouth, but dislike the person within your heart, That's what it's commanded. So you have the distaste, you have
Yeah.
the deception already ingrained in you. That's why I
Yeah.
use the word hate, because I do not use the word lightly, because it says in the sources, and you've shown that so many times, Lloyd. So that's why the word hate I use, because
No, but
it's a truer sense.
people need to realize you've got third world culture, and I come from the third world. This doesn't mean that I am a hardcore ingrained third worlder with a bone through my nose when I'm not on YouTube. But
Exactly.
what that means is I understand the culture. I I come from that culture. I grew up in that culture, and I
Yeah.
know how from it. People do need to realize, Westerners need to realize, and please understand this: tribal people only love who is in their tribe. Anyone outside of their tribe, they do not like you very much. And the tribes hate each other. And I don't
But
Yeah,
mean they have polite disagreements. They hate each other. They hate each other
exactly.
viscerally and violently.
I, I
And
think
they apply laws and morals differently to people outside of the tribe.
Yeah.
I
Thunderous, you
think,
were going to say?
yeah, I was just going to say as well, you've got to think about what the Quran teaches and what Islam teaches to the Muslim mind as well, is that they're by far the most superior human beings on the planet as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that their attitude towards non-Muslims is you're inferior, you're lesser, as though they are chattel anyway. So
Right.
when you've got this kind of so they flee one ghetto and they go to another country and they replicate the ghetto, so they have their own communities inside. And all that does, it strengthens the ties, it strengthens the bonds, or more importantly, it strengthens the mindset of the community that they have within itself, but also how much it hates those that are not inside the community.
But if I can
Mm.
perhaps add to that, they set up these rabats, right? These little Muslim communities, these third world, rundown, broken communities inside of white European countries, not because they are not afforded opportunities, not because they cannot live in better places. One, it comes because they are there to colonize. They're there to set up a culture of their own with their own people because they detest, they dislike, they reject and refuse to accept white European Christian culture, be it French, German, Dutch, you name it. Right? For the most part, they reject those cultures. They're there to colonize. They're not there to integrate. Two, they're not capable of doing so because one, they have a completely different cultural set of values, which determines their morals and determines their
Mm.
law. Right? So you've got obviously Islam and tribal law, which is at odds with and completely antithetical to Western law. Third, few people need to understand educational aid to Africa is effectively almost never going to work. There are very few successful examples of this because for a black person, and I come from Africa and I can tell you this is true, for a black person to become educated means in the eyes of other black people, he becomes white. He walks away from his culture, he walks away from his people, he rejects blackness and he embraces whiteness. He becomes white. I've been told this over and over and over. And
Oh, yeah.
so now you are trying to be white. You think you're white. No,
Well, we
I'm
have
just
names for them,
educated.
don't we, Lloyd? We have names for them.
Yes,
Like
we have
black people are called
Oreos,
Oreos,
coconuts, and
and
various
brown people are coconut. Yeah.
other names. So
Yeah.
understand they reject education because for you to adopt white education is to reject black culture. And you will be ostracized from your community and you'll be punished for doing so. So you're dealing with a culture that refuses to integrate, not isn't capable. It refuses to. It rejects you a priori. They because they reject you, they detest you, they will not integrate. You cannot allow these people in because you're simply
Mhm.
allowing a cancer to grow, something that is always going to be antithetical. It's going to be an antibody, not an antibody. It is going to be like a virus, something that is always going to be there, like an ulcer or a sore or a cancer cell.
Yeah.
Thunderous, your thoughts on that?
No, no, I agree with you. I think it's the same thing with the brown community as well. That you're perceived as being a bit of a sellout
Yes.
once you start climatizing to Western culture. I think they refer to it as the decadent West, and they're also their mindset is that they genuinely feel within themselves that the Sharia law, is by far the superior, and that the problems that the Western world has are going to be rectified by implementing the Sharia. So there's an end game strategy within what their mindset is that if they have enough numbers, then they're going to create a Sharia, not just in the local community that they live in, but by extension to the rest of the country that they reside in as well. So their own mindset is not only are we superior human beings because our God tells us that we are and we're better than you, but the law that we have is also better than your law, and the law that we have, the Sharia, is going to resolve all your problems.
Yeah, someone made a couple of comments. I just want to mention this. Islamism is a false term. There is only Islam. There is no political Islam. There is only Islam. With all due respect to Bill Warner and his group, for those who are not aware, I was part of Bill Warner's group. I wrote a couple of papers for Bill Warner's group. I joined that group. I advised that group. I can tell you flat out right now, I know more about Islam than every single member of Bill Warner's group combined. If we had a debate with every single person who knows Bill Warner's knowledge of Islam, plus me on the other side, all by myself, I would mop the floor with the lot of them. Forget this term Islamism. There is only Islam. Islam is a political system. You cannot separate the two. It is a deen first and foremost. It is religion 10th in terms of its priorities.
Just to emphasize on that very point you mentioned, because Islam focuses on, supposedly you're in Pakistan, you're in Lahore, city of Lahore. Imagine this, anyone who's watching. Imagine that you can go to 4 separate areas. You can go to a very Sunni area, you can go to a very Wahhabi area, you can go to a very Shia-based area, you can go to an Ahmadi area. So imagine being in a city and you're in the middle. So if you want to have an opinion on some hadith, you can go to a Shia, you can go to a Sunni, you can go to a Wahhabi, and you'll get 4 different interpretations of these things. So when you have an opinion-based religion, and some people will say, oh, Islam is about pillaging, about fighting, about regards to war, you'll have all different sorts of opinions, even in Islam. So when people will say, oh, because this part of Islam is not the true Islam, but this part of Islam is true. But everything from the beginning of Islam has already been in regards to the interpretation of on the school of thought, right?
It's decided in the Sharia. Now, Wizard's words here says Muslims are not Islamists. Forcing Sharia is Islamists, not Muslims. No. If you are a Muslim, by definition, you accept the Sharia. If you're a Muslim, you accept the Sharia. If you do not accept the Sharia, you are not a Muslim. You're an apostate. If you accept the Sharia defines all of the laws of Islam, and it defines the political ideology of Islam. There is no Islamism. When you say Islamists, you are talking about the Muslims who are following Azima. That is the strict doctrine. The rest are following in terms of what we call Rukhsa. That is the lenient doctrine, where they can actually literally go against the tenets of the Sharia to fit in, but they'll still receive reward from Allah. This is not a permanent state. This could be a temporary state. They can switch and they can become strict at any time. So you need to learn to use correct terminology. You need to learn to use the words that Islam uses and define it as Islam uses, not as Westerners falsely, incorrectly term it.
So, can I ask you a question, Lloyd?
Yep.
So few of the Muslims I met here, not really Muslims, but very cultural Muslims, and they say no, they reject all the hadiths and everything else. They reject this extreme Islam, and they reject the killing of the people who leave their religion. So, but they still call themselves Muslim. They say like, yeah, we like this sort of things. But do you truly think they're truly Muslims, in your opinion?
They could be lying, or they could be cultural Muslims. I guess that's a possibility, but they could also be hardcore jihadis who are just biding their time like a sleeper cell. Thunderous, over to you.
Yeah, I think you can't separate it. There's no such thing as you're either Muslim or you're not. You're either pregnant or you're not. There's no such thing as little bit pregnant or such. So when a person identifies themselves as a Muslim, it's what I call levels of ignorance as to what being a Muslim is. Now, most Muslims are Muslim by rote. That is to say, it's a perfunctory system that they're born into, and they do certain things. They'll do the Ramadan, they'll do Eid. They may not drink alcohol, and they'll only eat halal meat. That's the kind of minimum Muslim that you're going to get, and that's sadly to say most of the Muslims. But when they're backed into a corner, okay, they you won't find them siding against Islam. You'll side them siding for Islam. Okay, so from my perspective, being brought up in the community and that, they may well say things like, any human being, when you confront a human being with the truth that they don't believe is, that they were brought up to believe is true. For instance, I've confronted Muslims about the hadith about if a man leaves his religion, kill him. They go straight into denial because they can't accept it. So they're not, I could say they'll even refer to you as a liar, but that's not because they're not Muslim. That's because they can't accept the fact that there's certain truths in Islam
Well,
that goes against their human psyche and is born
couple
out
of
of their
points
own
on that.
ignorance.
One, they may be totally ignorant because they've
Yeah.
been lied to by their scholars. To quote, that there is no compulsion in religion, which was abrogated by Quran 9:5, right? However, that said, it is also illegal. It is illegal, and it is considered treason for a Muslim to admit to anything that is embarrassing to Islam, and for him to admit that yes, he is supposed to, according to Islam, according to the Sharia, kill those who are apostates, kill those who are non-Muslims, that ultimately that is your fate, to make violent warfare on you. That is embarrassing to Islam, and therefore he must lie about it, because lying is obligatory in Islam. To cause shame and embarrassment in Islam is called ghibba. That is slander. Now in Islam, slander is to say something that is true but embarrassing, that you wouldn't want to hear, as opposed to slander in Western law, which is to say something that is false and harmful. In Islam, is to say something that is true but embarrassing. So those are a couple of things to think about. I just want to change tack for a moment, since throughout Europe, you've got here, this happened over the last couple of days. There have been 2 beheadings in Spain in the last 48 hours, right? 2 beheadings. We all, yeah. Isn't immigration fantastic? Main suspect over beheading on Moreras Bridge, Valencia, captured after manhunt. This is only one of them. There was another, right? Manhunt for Algerian suspected of slitting throat of Spanish man in Valencia. Fantastic. We really need this kind of thing. So considering that it's Algerian, and considering that they slit the throat and nearly decapitated this person, they just didn't quite manage to finally do so. That obviously tells us this person was a Baptist, most certainly. And then, of course, you've got pajama party murder. Swedish child, 14, kidnapped, tied up, and killed on her way to a sleepover, with 2 girls who knew the victim arrested. We don't know that these were by Muslims, but yeah, obviously people suspect. Now, even if this is not by Muslims, for instance, right, the fact is that this kind of crime is so common with Muslims that people just automatically assume, right? Then you've got this Samuel Paty. 6 teenagers were convicted for the roles in the teacher's beheading. So this is clearly a conspiracy, because you've got 6 people charged with the crime, right? 6 of them. So that is conspiratorial crime, as in a legal term. And of course, what happened to these 6 murderers? They were let off with a slap on the wrist. It's like, hey, guys, oh my God, it's nearly 1 o'clock. I'm hungry. I want to take lunch. I'll tell you what, you guys, just don't do that again. Do 15 minutes of community service, wash my car, and you guys have a nice day now. Don't murder any more teachers anymore. Okay, thanks. Have a nice day. Bye, guys. That was what the judge basically said. And then Vilene White, Ipswich stabbing. Family of white grandmother allegedly murdered by South Sudanese boy joins. So yeah, we've got another woman that has been murdered in a knife stabbing just a day or so after these young girls were killed. And of course, you've got now Tunisian man beheads woman, kills 2 more people in Nice church. Now, this is 4 years ago, but I'm sure we can find multiple examples of this. So people are reacting and responding to this. We should not accept this, and reacting to this, responding to this, making an outcry against this is what the British government is right now criminalizing. They're criminalizing dissent against this kind of thing. They're criminalizing law and order. So do we see that this problem can be solved? I mean, we don't want violence. We don't want people to be hurt. But at this point, if you're not going to give a voice to these people's anguish, to their concerns and their frustration, and you've denied it for decades, do we see a way out of this without civil unrest, without potentially even civil war?
No. In a simple word, no. There's no way out of this. The cat's out of the bag.
there would be some people who would believe in having a communication in regards to these things, but I think, as Thundersman himself said, the cat is out of the bag. So unfortunately, when you're criminalizing to talk about these things, and especially as an immigrant, I've been told by the police, the officers themselves, that I should be the one stopping to cause offense to people. So, Francis, you need to shut up, because otherwise you'll be arrested. So obviously, I don't want to have a record on you or anything. So hence why I had to shut myself up as well sometimes, because for my own safety and for my own well-being. That's the issue that I live in the society where I'm like, if police can tell me do this or else, because I speak about the ugliness in something, and I speak about the ugliness that if you have illegal immigration, but me being an immigrant, people can turn around to me and say, "You're an immigrant too. How can you speak like this about immigrants?" But I came legally, so that's where the difference is. You have illegal people coming in and trying to change the narrative, trying to dismiss all the culture, all the rules of society. They're creating lawlessness, and when I speak about these things, I have to still shut up, because otherwise I'm deemed far right.
I think with what Francis is saying, I want us to bear in mind something else that came as a result of COVID and vaccines, and that was misinformation, disinformation, and the use and misuse of social media as far as spreading information is concerned. And that was brought up again as well in the light of the Manchester situation and after the stabbings, because when the stabbings took place, there was a name touted on the internet, Ali something or other. Okay. Now, the thing is that was misinformation, that what turned out to be false, but the you know that the power structure of this country, aided and abetted by the police, will use that as a mechanism to try and curb free speech, to stop misinformation and disinformation going out. Now, if you couple that with what will be deemed the new term, what will be identified as what does actually Islamophobia mean. And if Islamophobia in itself becomes a hate crime, that brings into question challenging anything that's Islamic. For instance, if you quote the Quran, if you challenge the Quran, if you reveal something about Muhammad and Aisha, for example, this can all be then determined as being hate speech. And that could well be something that will impact the social media system. Already, I think it was noted in the House of Commons during the COVID period, where the government asked for social media platforms to start administering some protocols in order to fact check the information that's being released by people using those social media systems. Already YouTube has already gone down that road. How many times have you noticed videos have gone missing? How many times have you noticed maybe comments you yourself have made have been removed or not even being allowed to be input on the comment section of Facebook, YouTube? So we're kind of seeing an impact of that already. Whether the situation with Islam escalates that will remain to be seen. But we're living in very serious times now. As far as getting back to some kind of normality is concerned, absolutely not. That would be like saying that we'll have to sort of like make fornication or sex outside of marriage illegal, or children outside of marriage illegal. That's never going to happen. You've allowed these relaxations to come in, and that kind of behavior has become normalized now for that particular generation anyway. And it's the same thing with the attitude that you've got towards Islam. You've normalized it now. You've normalized it for the Muslim mindset, and you've now normalized it for the indigenous.
Yeah. If I can ask a question here from, well, here's one from Richard Quimby. Excellent discussion. Do any of you three have a Muslim background? For myself, no. However, I do have a member of my family who converted to Islam, and also because I come from South Africa, half my family is white, half my family is, well, looks like me. And so that is pretty normal from a South African perspective, within my grouping anyway. And so I've got Muslim family. So yeah, I come from a mixed environment where this is fairly normal. So yeah, and I grew up around Muslims, my best friend for most of my life. my two best friends were Muslims. Unfortunately, yeah, I've left the country, and the work that I do in Islam has obviously caused some degree of separation there now. But of course, Francis and Thunderous both are ex-Muslims. Do you want to add a few words there, Francis, and then Thunderous?
Yes, Richard, I do come from a Muslim background and a very extreme background, like um, extreme in the way that I am, uh, a very different, very one of those cultural moderate Muslims who are the munafiqeens, and then growing up in a society with full of Salafis, the very extreme version of Islam. So I grew up in a society like that. So yes, that is me. But my family had agnostics. My family had atheists. So I grew up in a very different society than many of the people will grow up in. But yeah, I grew up as a Muslim. Very cultural one though. Let's just put it that way.
Thunderous?
Yeah, born and raised as a Muslim till I was old enough to legally leave home. I brought up in the United Kingdom, mixed race. So I don't think my dad was really a Muslim. I think he was more a communist. But when you're brought up in the community, you are forced to, how can I say, follow certain cultural norms within the Pakistani Muslim community. For instance, going mosque and yada, 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 and getting educated at Quran school, yada, yada, yada. So I knew it, but I recognized that if there was a truth, Islam could not be the truth. There were certain things that didn't reconcile with me. I couldn't reconcile with them. I couldn't. That's another subject anyway. But yes, born and raised a Muslim. But as soon as I was old enough to legally leave home at 16, I left home and I never looked back.
Yeah. Don't you think there's been a sea change since this attack in Southport, where this African migrant, and I was shocked at how they were portraying him as a 6 to 11-year-old in school looking angelic, and of course, which looks nothing like how he does today, but they were trying to drum up sympathy for him. But don't you think that that particular moment somehow has been a sea change and it's flipped a switch? Because I knew there was a simmering anger within the British population. I feel the same in Europe. Do you feel that something has changed and that things are going to escalate from here and come to a head?
I think from my perspective, if you recall the list that I made earlier on about the parents having to go to the mosque to apologize, the beheadings that have taken place in Europe, the Muslim attacks and the acts of violence taking place within this country, I think people have been recognizing it, storing it, storing it, storing it, storing it. The knife, I think the Manchester situation where the police were being violated. Now, there could be questionable reasons what really took place there, and perhaps there are. But I think certain things have been tolerated for not just a year or two, but for many, many years. Immigration of young men, young fighting men between the ages of 15 and 40, the constant sexual attacks and rapes that are taking place, the Muslim grooming gangs that have been protected by the police and were known of for many years, has been simmering, simmering, simmering. And then the situation with the stabbing, it was like, enough's enough. There's only so far that the public can
Mhm.
sit here and not
They came for
react.
the children. I mean, they came for the children deliberately.
Whether has it been confirmed whether the Alex Rabucanu, whatever his name is, was radicalized? Has that been confirmed yet?
No information forthcoming, so we just have to sit tight at this point. We don't know. I mean, we don't even know if he was a Muslim. However,
They've,
you know,
if
the,
you don't
the
mind me
lack of
saying,
information just leads to speculation. But of
they,
course, people just assume that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when the news came out, I mean, it was a 17-year-old child, so they already started using language to downplay. It was a 17-year-old child, and obviously, my first instinct was, how can you be a child at 17 when you're old enough to drive a car, ride a moped, go to the pub, and have sex, and blah blah blah. Um, but then they tried to play the thing that he'd come from Rwanda, predominantly English or Christian, rather Christian denomination country, though he hadn't, but his parents had, almost trying to move the narrative away from any kind of we can't reveal the fact that he was radicalized or that there might be an Islamic connection. So they're moving, strategizing in the media away from
Well, they
this.
don't want to. I don't think they want to compound the issue by adding the Islam, slice on top of it. but already this goes against the narrative of these wonderful immigrants. I mean, just a question for you, Thunderous, and then for the same for Francis. Do you think that a Haitian or a Pakistani, like a proper solid, tribal Pakistani, coming to London and getting a passport makes him a Brit, or does it make him a tourist with a British passport?
Tourist. He's just a tourist with a British passport.
For me, I would have to say, I'll be generally honest here with my answer. I would have to say that certain times they will truly integrate and truly become Brit, but sadly, with the statistics, I would have to say tourist. So it's a sad reality.
I mean, I think we know this. Look, would you say that, and I mean, I think we're speaking up for a lot of, look, I mean, I have, who knows if my channel will still exist in 30 minutes, we're going to have to find out, right? If by tomorrow I still have a YouTube channel, but I mean, we are saying things that I don't think that necessarily, shall we say, white Europeans or white Americans can easily articulate. Maybe we have a little bit of color immunity. There's that possibility, but also I think we understand the mindset, we understand the culture we're dealing with, and perhaps we're a bit more honest. And yeah, there are things that we can say that it may not go over so well. And I know that lots of Christians and lots of conservatives are going to go, well, actually, Lloyd, you need to be a bit more nuanced. In my view, honestly, you need to just shut the hell up and listen. So
nuanced. You mean
Yeah.
nuanced where we have female genital mutilation, where we have to be more nuanced because of honor killings. We have to be more nuanced because we have to define what kidnapping is. We have to be more nuanced because of forced marriages.
Correct. So these
growing
things are
up in
real.
growing up in a third world country, especially, it's like when I listen to these people being so overly, overly forgiving. I'm like, you can't forgive ugliness. Like you can't let the evil get away. But you're constantly talking about these people in such high regard. But you know what? Like it's their culture. We have to be accepting. You do you accept evil in your home? Like you talk about accepting evil around everywhere in the society, but when the evil knocks on your own door, that's when they cry. So even in those people, I've seen double standards as well.
Something I noticed when I was in the Middle East, right? Middle Easterners, if you're polite, in many, many cases, working with with the mindset of the people, when you're polite, they will walk all over you. They will
Yes.
ignore you. But the moment you're aggressive and even rude, they will stand in line, jump, and get things done.
Yeah.
Would you say to the audience, now we're talking white European audience here, and I mean this is not in a racist sense, we're just making a distinction between one group and another, which makes it a little bit easy, but would you say that typically non-white, when I say black I generally mean non-white, right, these Europeans, these immigrants actually have a great disrespect for, and for these Europeans, simply because they won't stand up and be blunt, be direct, and enforce their culture. They won't say, look, you will learn English or you'll get the hell out. Do you think that the fact that they refuse to enforce those things, their culture, actually makes them disrespected and seem weak? Because third world culture actually responds to strength, not to politeness.
Yeah.
Politeness is seen as weakness, and politeness is seen as an opportunity to take advantage of a
Yeah.
stupid sucker. Would you agree with that, Francis?
I
Thunderous.
100% agree. The reason why I agree is because growing up in a society, when you have to call it what it is, call spade a spade, basically, and you have to say, if you supposedly people would say, oh, why would you study in the British school system abroad? I'm like, well, because the thing is, I don't want to end up like an idiot. But that would be a normal response, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, fair enough." But if I say that very same sentence to a Britisher, "Oh, why would you call them idiots?" Like you can't think like that, can you? I'm like, no, you don't know how the third world country works. You don't know the society around there, the psyche around there. So when even people are like, you have to be more understanding. I'm like, yeah, I can be more understanding, but I have the capacity to call out stupidity. Unfortunately, you like to uphold people's stupidity. That is why you're deteriorating as a society, and let's just call it the way it is. You are
Thunderous.
you're the reason why the country's now in such a horrible state because of your
Thunderous,
liberal lefty ideas, because of your too much of a simpleton
so
idea
there
that
should be a
people.
bit more strength. There should be a bit more
Of
like, look, you will
course,
toe the line, damn it, or there will be consequences. We need a bit more
of
of that.
course. Like if people are working in care sector, supposedly this African community works in the care sector, they are let off so easily, right? But there'll be no arrest made. They'll be, oh, just forgive and it's all right. Their culture is different. But then if I say something, if I do something wrong, they will immediately take an action against it. Because the thing is, because they know my mindset works differently. I'm gonna be calling out the way it is. I'm gonna, supposing if a colleague of mine did something wrong before, I'll call them out, and then the company will realize he's not like that. So he's like, he calls things out basically. But with the so I've seen this working in the companies too, in this country. So I see the idea there's too lenient, extreme leniency does not get you anywhere.
Yeah, Thunderous.
Yeah, I would say then if you look at post World War One, and then it got accelerated after post World War Two, and that would be the loss of the foundation of Christian basis for morality and strength in the United Kingdom. That's when Christianity started losing its value, impact, and strength and foundation, and you found that the moral decline of atheism and sexual liberation and such things started to creep in. So what you've got today, in my estimation, is a society that has no foundation. It has no correlation or identity with anything that's solid. Everything is now free as you go. It's subjective at best. So it gives no strength of character. It gives no foundation, and it gives no force with what you believe or any identity. So when you're saying, to give an example, for instance, there is a time to be kind. There's a time to be polite, but there's also a time to be to show strength of character and to be forceful and to be outright, or in the case with Islam, is righteously indignant. And I think because people have no foundation, because they've got no belief system, or their religions have actually let them down as well. Certain Christian denominations have not helped by allowing the LGBTQ, by allowing promiscuity, by allowing certain things, by teaching things that Adam and Eve are not real people and Darwinian evolution is true, but also saying you have to show respect for the Abrahamic religions, because you see now Islam, you're finding, is being identified as one of the key components of the Abrahamic religions, therefore giving credibility.
But don't you find they misdefine respect? Respect means allow them to walk all over you, allow them to do whatever they like, rather than have a firm set of boundaries and clear distinctions and where the lines are.
Yeah, but those distinctions would have a foundation in your identity as to what your worldview is. If your worldview is Christianity, that would be the foundation for you to mark the line as far as respect is concerned. Like I said, respect is one thing, but you have to have a foundation for it. If you don't have an identity, a foundation, or a worldview, then you will be walked over.
I mean, Jesus did have a lot of respect for people and a lot of tolerance, and he also sat down carefully, thoughtfully, gathered the ingredients, made a whip, and kicked the crap out of people.
Yeah, and told the Pharisees where John 8:44, you're from your father the devil. He had to speak to firmly with John and James. He told Peter, get behind me. So Jesus wasn't shy or reticent of speaking things when he needed to speak, but he was still known as a teacher and as a man that was approachable and kind and loving. But when he needed to be, he set boundaries. And but then he had a foundation to do that. And the point I'm trying to make is many people today in the United Kingdom or Europe, because they've lost that Christian identity or Christian foundation, or because their brands of Christianity have let them down, they've got no, if you like, foundation in order to have a moral countenance or a spiritual countenance to the impact of immigration, and particularly with the religious influences coming into.
So would you say Jesus was willing to cause offense? Over
Absolutely. Principle. You're from your father the devil. You're nothing but whitewashed tombs. Of course.
So should Western countries, should the Brits, should the government, should people be willing to cause offense to say, sorry, these are my principles, this is my culture, these are my laws, these are my beliefs, you do not cross this boundary?
No, you said sorry there. I don't think the word sorry should even be used. It's, these are the boundaries, not sorry, these are the boundaries. These are the boundaries. That's what should be said. There's no need to apologize from. Jesus didn't say sorry. Well, at what point did Jesus, in any dialogue did he ever apologize for what he stood for? He didn't. So following that role model, why would I apologize? Well, let's have it right. Let's have it right. Your prophet raped a 9-year-old girl. Why would I want to apologize for admitting that?
Actually, true. They want to be named after the world's most famous pedophile. I mean, really, we should just start calling him the world's most famous pedophile.
So why would I apologize for that? Why would I be reticent in revealing that? That's your prophet. That's your role model. You know, by saying that you're a Muslim, using the principle of communal community responsibility, you're basically saying, I accept, I protect, I promote, I defend, I idolize and follow this man. Why would I have respect for your ideology, or even you for that fact?
Yeah.
You're the problem here, not me.
Yeah. Francis, when I hear, for instance, I will listen to a black person speak, right? The three of us, we know the language, we know the game, we know how it's played, we know how to run the system against nice white people to get certain benefits. You know, you don't have to play the race card. You can just play just tease that card out just a fraction, and you know they'll crumble. You know you can get certain benefits, get certain advantages. Now, I mean, this is not to say you are do this or that Thunderous does this. I don't think so. But the fact is, we know the mindset. We know how the game is played. We know that the culture we come from. Look, I try to explain it to people like this. If I'm sitting at a restaurant, if I was in South Africa and I left my phone on the table, that phone wouldn't be there in 15 seconds because someone would run by or walk by and grab it and it would be gone. Same with your sunglasses, your wallet, your bag. So, but because we've grown up in that society, you look around, you see someone's phone, and immediately your mind goes, I could steal that. This is not because you're a thief, but it's because you're constantly at risk of being a victim. You need to identify those circumstances and protect yourself. You're not looking to be a shark, you're looking to be shark proof. So you protect your possessions because you realize people with the mindset where I grew up, they would take advantage of that. They would use that as an opportunity for theft, right? To enrich themselves, to benefit themselves, because those rich white people can always afford phones, right? They can always afford to buy a new pair of sunglasses. White people just walk up to those machines in the wall and it just gives them money. It's not like they have to work, right? I literally heard that from blacks in Africa one time. White people just go to those machines in the wall and it gives them money. They don't have to work, you see? So this is literally the mindset of many Africans. Now, we do this, so we know that there's a mindset game here being played, and we protect ourselves from it. But yeah, just your thoughts on this. I mean, do you think it's going to be hard? And for the audience, I mean, is it hard for you to start saying no, to draw a line, to define who you are, what your values are? I mean, do you think it's easy to manipulate white people? And do you think that they should start drawing that line? Because I think it is. In many ways, in many cases, yes, it is. They're too lenient. They're too respectful. They assume that those third worlders have the same culture, values, morals, and mindset as they do, and clearly they do not. Your thoughts on it?
I 100% have to acknowledge the fact that I live in an area where people still leave their supposedly around a cafe. They still will leave their laptops on the tables, and they go to the toilet, and having no regard of there could be someone who could steal this and run away. No, they still do it because I think they live in this bubble where they have not faced any issues whatsoever in regards to theft. I personally, what I do is, if I see some person not giving the space or not acting, in the manner that they should, I would say, excuse me, and I would say, you need to apologize. I will call it up for it is. I'll be like, you need to move. You need to be more respectful. I'll get the dirty looks from the white people because they're like, oh, you can't speak like this. You're calling it out for what it is. And I'm like, no, I believe that white people should definitely call out for what it is. They should have boundaries because every human being has a boundary. Supposedly in your home, if I go to a white person's home and they tell me, okay, take your shoes off, I will take my shoes off. In an Asian home, the same thing, right? But
even in a Polish home, you take your shoes off. That's what you do here.
Exactly. but it's a sign of respect. But the thing is, outside the society belongs to you as well, right? In a society, you're seeing people just in mopeds. You predominantly black people, the young black guys are going around and stealing people's phones. What can you do about it? You need to call it out for what it is. But if the white people call it out for what it is, they're deemed as racist because you're targeting only black people. So that is also becoming an issue. But you need to get over the fact that calling of things for what it is does not make you a racist. If people call you a racist, you need to ignore them. You need to grow. You need to grow a bit of a more stronger mindset to call these things out. But the thing is, they're too weakened because they don't want to be labeled anything. So
Yeah.
because they're scared of being labeled as a racist, they're scared of being labeled as homophobic, racist, transphobic. So it's like they want to have this Puritan status, but that's not how society works.
That is destructive at the end of the day. You are
Yeah.
harming yourself. I want to say thank you to Blue Light Moon for that donation. Thank you very, very much. And Not of Works. Thank you as well. He says, God bless Lloyd, panel, and chat. Thank you very much. And Connor has actually said something very interesting. They took away national service because they didn't want a fit, well-trained populace able to stand up to a globalist government. Yeah, guys, get fit, get strong, learn to fight. Um, Arm yourselves for the sake of protecting your families or your own lives. I mean, you need to know how there's an aggression in these people, and clearly the government's not on your side. So
That's
yeah, you need to. Thunderous, your thoughts?
No, I was just thinking about mindset, and I know it's something that we discussed maybe last year, or the year previous, Lloyd, about the mindset of people, particularly when you consider that immigrants, and particularly Islamic immigrants, are coming from countries where women's identities kept hidden. They're hidden behind lots of cloth, so you don't see the face of the body form, or they're hidden in homes, so your exposure to women is very, very limited. So most of the time, what do they do? Well, the biggest porn purveyors in the world are from Islamic countries. And what do they see? They
Pakistan
see,
has the biggest Google search for gay porn.
but they
yeah.
they, they 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 watch porn, and what do they see when they watch porn? They're seeing predominantly white women performing sexual acts. So their mindset is, oh, well, already the Western world is lower than us. It is decadent. It's got no moral value because we've got the Sharia and we're better. So when they do come over to the Western world, their mindset is that white English girls are easy, cheap trash to have sex with. And of course, the reality is when they get here, that's not really the case. So hence
Yeah.
why the rejection is something for them hard to handle, because that's not what the mindset was when they were living in these Islamic countries, watching or getting, or even watching, say, Western movies, looking at the way women are portrayed in Western movies. They've been fed a wrong narrative, a wrong understanding of about how relationships work or how
But then
sexual
how
relationships
retarded
work.
are these people? How uneducated are they that they are somehow mixing up fantasy, which is the movies, with reality?
It doesn't help when you look at Islam and the Quran, and your role model prophet was a sex maniac, and Allah's brothel is basically Pornhub. So when you're watching, when you're brought up in this ideology, sex and porn is pretty much, well, if you're not getting it from the Quran and the Hadith, you're going to get it from the internet. And when you come to the Western world, it's almost like you want to sample before you go to Allah's brothel.
Yeah. So the UK, I think, is turning into a real powder keg, and I think it's, I said, perhaps the canary in the coal mine. It's, and I think it's kicking off, and one can understand the anger. This is not far right anger. This is people genuinely upset. Today, in Rotherham, there was an attack on a Holiday Inn, which is a migrant hotel. People actually were clashing with the police, pushing them back. They actually broke into the hotel. They've trashed the external as well as the internal parts of the hotel. And this is now, clearly you can say the violence is a crime, but one can also understand why. And they've been left. Now remember, during the BLM riots, when blacks were destroying cities and causing billions of dollars of damage and killing 30 plus people or dozens of people, everyone said, well, these riots are the voice of the unheard. Well, I'm going to say the same, and these British riots are the voice of the unheard. of course, it's one set of rules for thee and another set of rules for me, which we're going to start seeing. But I find it crazy that Muslims and black people are always minorities. Yes, in England, but ultimately, white people are a minority on the planet, which is what, 7, maximum 8% of all people worldwide. So maybe white people should think of themselves as a minority, and the fact that they might want to protect their little minority countries that they live in, and not be so open and generous to. Obviously, I came to Poland for the welfare, as you guys probably well know. Which is, but maybe white people need to start taking a stand and start some tough love and start finding their inner a-hole instead of trying to be sympathetic to every cause and person.
I
I
think
do
what
add one thing though in regards to all of this. Sorry, apologies for the excuse here. I do have to add in that we can't be lawless. We can't be part of the lawlessness as well. That's another idea that a lot of Christians have to think within themselves. Can we be part of something about lawlessness? Because that's another dilemma as Christians that we have. Sorry to cut you off there, Thunderous One, but that's why I was thinking it's a dilemma that we all have. So.
Fair point. As a Christian, yeah, we need to be moral and try to be virtuous. Yeah, Thunderous?
I think a lot of, just going back to some of the points that both you guys have raised about the attitude of the indigenous of England. I think what one has to bear in mind that the generation of people that you're referring to are probably in their 30s and 35 now, where you'd expect the retaliation or the response or the kickback. But the entertainment and the world for the past 30 years in this country has been one of softening and molding the mindset of these people as well. They've been conditioned and programmed into this mindset of accepting and via soap operas, via media. Francis made an interesting comment a few comments ago where it said, right, well, if you have an opinion now, an opinion is now hate speech. Telling the facts is sort of like a form of intolerance. Having an opinion is bigotry. Saying something about Islam is now Islamophobia. Having an attitude against the LGBTQ means you're transphobic. Saying you don't agree with the homosexual lifestyle means you're homophobic. They're created pejoratives to stifle criticism and conversation. In this country, 30 odd years ago, there used to be debate programs where you'd have an open debate and discuss the matter. You may not necessarily agree or disagree with any one side, but you'd have to go through a mental process in order to understand why you did agree and why you didn't agree. Now you don't. You get the sound of one hand clapping, meaning that all you ever hear is one narrative all the time now. So what that does, it programs people from the early age, from school all the way up into when you're going into work now, and your work have programs and guidelines and principles and policies where about tolerance and patience and being mindful of other people's needs and such, and respecting their culture, respecting their identity. So you're programmed at school, you're programmed at university, you're programmed when you get into the workspace, and then when you're coming home and watching your soap operas, you're getting programmed there as well. There's no escaping from it. So when you face the reality of the world that we're having at the moment, where there's a kickback from an identity or from a population of people or a demographic of people that haven't been programmed in such manner, you're not mentally or emotionally equipped to respond back to it. You don't have the tools to respond because you've got no foundation, because any foundation that you had has been well worn away decades ago.
Anything from you? I'm just going to bring up something, but any thought from you, Francis? There's just something that I want to bring up right now.
Sure. I do have to chime in that for anyone, certain people are saying in regards to the riots that these are a trap, because this is somehow another idea of making it much more of a police state, that if you join these riots, you will be persecuted, you will be tarnished, you can be criminalized, and you can have a criminal record, which can also affect your livelihood. So I do have to say to all the people that have some discernment as well in regards to knowing that you don't want to fall into that trap where you yourself, because you as an individual, you have a family too. So that's something that people need to understand. Also, the other fact is that we should not be scared of speaking out the things that we are saying, even over here. Like, sometimes I have to shut my mouth because of obviously, um, being a person who also is an immigrant can cause issues for me and for the people around me. So we have to be safeguarding ourselves, but also making sure that we voice our opinions too, where we can. And that's a sad reality that we live in. But because I can't particularly see things like Ed Speaker's Corner, supposedly, why I stopped going there is because it's just a demonic place. People are just upselling their religion. And Starmer, exactly, Alexander. Starmer is trying to remove our right to free
Yeah.
speech. I can't criticize Islam. Like, if I go outside a mosque, I'll be arrested. But a Muslim comes outside a church, in my church, the police wouldn't do anything, and that's happened.
Oh yeah, they wasn't there many years ago. There was kill those who insult the Prophet. To
Oh
hell
yeah.
with free speech and such things, and God bless Hitler. Such things have been seen in this country, and it's done with immunity and impunity, therefore strengthening the side of Islam. But I cannot quote the Quran, right? I cannot quote the Hadith without it being branded hate speech. How much further from reality can you get in this day and age?
Are you talking about this image here?
Massacre those who insult Islam. There you go.
Like, great, British Muslims unite for peace. Sure, yeah. Um, I just want to, so I want to wind down. We've been going roughly an hour and a half, so I want to throw something at the audience and then give you guys a chance to comment, and we can wind down. We can always pick this up again sort of next weekend, perhaps. But this is a paper. This is dated May 2019. I wrote this. This was a paper that I did. This was work that I did on behalf of the Bill Warner organization, right? Just so that people know. I may as well just speak about it. It's been several years now. Just so you know, the Bill Warner organization kicked me out. Not for anything I did wrong, but they have a policy whereby they do not associate with public individuals. So I was kicked out of the group because I had done, I think at that point in my life, I'd done 4 or 5 interviews on YouTube or something. I'd done a handful of interviews on YouTube on a different channel, not my own. I had been interviewed by someone and to discuss Islam and the Sharia, and this was the reason that the Bill Warner organization kicked me out.
Wow.
Now, one of the things that I did for them was this, which apparently went ultimately up to Ted Cruz, and it was apparently used as part of the motivation. Some of what I wrote here was used as part of a motivation for banning the Muslim Brotherhood. But I want to bring this up, right? Here's a basic summary of the problem and solution. So the aim of the enemy is to inhibit critical analysis and to create memes, simple arguments that inspire the following 3 things. 1, shame. Because you, as the victim, the white Brit or French person or you name it, you pick the nationality that's black. Shame. You do not critically examine or defend what you're ashamed of. You retreat. You're a racist. Your parents were racist. You were slave owners, and so on. So you're colonizers. So the world, and of course, you don't critically examine, and you're ashamed of it, so you retreat. You don't examine the truth of it, and so on. And you don't look at the fact that they are 99% of the time, they're just projecting, right? They're using this as dominance to shut you down and take over, to steal your stuffs, if you want to put it that way. 2, amnesia. You cannot be inspired by or draw from what you forgot or do not know. And by this I mean you cannot be inspired by the virtue of those who came before you, your ancestors, by the virtue of your culture, by the beauty, by the greatness, by the glory of your culture. You need to remember these things. You have to remember these things. These are your anchor, or you will be adrift, and you will just be a leaf in the wind, and they will destroy you. Irrationality. They will destroy logic and evidence with rhetoric, propaganda, and emotion. You need to stay stuck to logic. However, you cannot also want to lose virtuously on principle. The word for that is being stupid. It is being weak. Because what I've noticed is from Westerners, European cultured Westerners, Americans, whatever, we're going to lose, but we sat with principle, and I know we've lost everything, and we're here in our underwear, and we're going to die here in the middle of winter from starvation. But we stood on principle, and even though we've lost everything and the barbarians have taken over, we can feel proud that we stood on. No, you need to win. You need to know how to win. Sure, you can win on principle, but you need to still win. You are happy to lose. You're happy to bend over as long as they promise to use a little bit of Vaseline. The answer to that is no, right? You have to identify and expose every one of these talking points as a lie. Now, a couple of things. Why do they censor you? Why did Keir Starmer say what he said? Because you cannot talk about these things, because then you will divert the hatred that is normally and incorrectly diverted at the enemy, right? You are being denied a unified outlet for frustration. They want to take away patriotism, so you cannot rally around the flag, you cannot rally around the values. They want to destroy Christianity because you cannot rally around that. You can only embrace the enemy's values and thus hasten your demise, right? And you cannot blame the enemy. You cannot say it's the Muslims. You have to go Islamists. That is an illusion. That is wrong. Islamists don't exist. They're Muslims. Please be correct about that, right? So the hatred you would divert at the enemy cannot be directed at the enemy, and you divert it at yourself. You divert it at the Jews, okay? You divert it at, I don't know, you take your pick, the aliens, the conspiracy theorists, the them, the gray, what you pick who you divert this at. It sows seeds of self-doubt, classical demoralization. Am I right? Am I wrong? They provide a new focus of frustration, hatred, and blame, right? The conspiracy theory route. Now, you must understand humiliation. It's also a humiliation ritual. You as the white Brit, you as the white European, as the American, you are being humiliated. Humiliation leads to withdrawal from critical analysis of painful or embarrassing events, i.e., amnesia. It creates amnesia. We just mentioned amnesia up here. You cannot be inspired by or draw from what you forgot or what you do not know. An amnesiac becomes disoriented. You must understand, this is not an accident. This is based on warfare propaganda studies, right? Psychological studies of how to disable a population, how to make them completely paralyzed, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually paralyzed. This is what warfare strategists study. These things have been applied. You're seeing it in real time today. So an amnesiac is disoriented. In other words, he cannot orient upon events that impinge upon them. And you can no longer recognize friends nor identify and respond to threats. No, they're not threats. They're really just nice, sweet little brown people. If we just give them a hug, and just listen to them and just understand them, if we're just a little bit more tolerant, they'll see that everything is just how they should be. And no, and he said they raped my daughter, but if we're just giving them a little bit more tolerance, we need to, you need to understand these are your enemies. Understand, you have enemies. They hate you. You need to plan accordingly. So you cannot recognize friends, nor can you identify and respond to threats. You are utterly paralyzed. The result is vulnerability and a complete lack of awareness. So, last point I'll mention here, the critical denial of an enemy image. This is called information dominance. These are warfare strategies. So an important early step to successful demoralization is to deny the target the ability to verbalize frustrations and anger and identify the enemy. This is the point of hate speech laws. To deny you the ability to verbalize. If you can verbalize, you will rally around friends with a common cause. They do not want you creating common cause. You must speak out. You have to talk about this. These efforts neutralize the target. You're the target. Neutralize the target's ability to voice discontent, to discuss serious issues, to analyze the enemy, and to find common cause allies. Frustrations will build until the only outlet is to divert them elsewhere, most likely internally. Divide and conquer. Your anger, your frustration will lead to anxiety and breakdown. You will think you're the only one that thinks like this. You will eventually destroy yourself with frustration. Seeds of doubt will grow in the minds of the citizenry, who will start to question their leadership and feel isolated and helpless. It is a plan. I wrote this years ago because I had to study this for this paper. So do understand, it's up to you. Rally around your culture, your values, your religion, Christianity, right? The Ten Commandments, right? The Magna Carta, all of the above. And it's up to you now as a society. Know who you are. A united enemy is very hard to defeat. A divided one, they will trample you underfoot. Your thoughts, Francis and Thunderous?
I would have to say, if you repeat a lie so many times, it ultimately becomes a truth. You encapsulate that all of that in this one thing because they just want to create an idea that if you do not conform to us, we will label something and put phobia again after that. That's it. It's such a sad state of affair in all in I remember back in 2020, 2014 up till now, I've seen the amount of changes in this country is unbelievable. It's like, as you mentioned, create an enemy out of people who call out things the way it is. It's a very daunting thought. It's easily spoken, but it's a very extreme thought. So, but thank you for this whole information, brother. God bless.
Yep. Thank you. And Thunderous, your thoughts?
I think there are 2 points that you've mentioned in there that I think I've mentioned during the discussion this evening, and that's the removal of the foundation and then Islamophobia becoming hate speech. So the work that you've done previously is that would have been read by people who would have seen, who probably required it at a higher level to see the nuances move in political, educational, and social structures. But for the layman now, what you've written there, people can see for themselves. It is happening right here, right now, before their very eyes, that the foundation of people's lives has been removed and laws are being implemented in order to curtail free speech, whether that's by inventing laws to say that what you're coming out your mouth is now illegal, or chaperoning, conditioning, and implementing various rules as to what can and can't be said on social media now. So the article you've written seems to be very much what is alive today now, Lloyd.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, for the audience, yeah, this was unscripted. We wanted to talk about the UK as a powder keg, but hopefully we were able to dig into some of the root causes and just to speak honestly, discuss issues that are not typically considered politically correct or allowed in polite conversation, but these are things that I think needed to be discussed. I think we have a perspective as in one sense outsiders, but also as citizens, residents living within white Western countries, European countries. We bring a perspective that is often lacking, and I think we can be honest. We see both sides of the issue. Would you agree with that? That we do see both sides of the issue from our cultural backgrounds.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I wasn't aware that Francis Boulet was a Muslim, or ex-Muslim rather. So Francis himself can come from experience and exposure internally, and then to see it from not just subjectively but objectively as well. And you, Lloyd, I think there's no greater example of somebody that does polemics against Islam, where you've been able to dig deeper, not just in the Quran and Hadith, but the Sharia and the law and the mindset. And with your expertise as in military training, and here this article is an example that the perspective that all three of us can come with is one that it will be deemed hate speech because it's based on reality.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. There was a quote that I was thinking of, and for some reason one of the words now just escapes me. But there is no what's the term is there is no there's a word for some reason there's a word that escapes me, but there is no something until victory. But you can fit in a number of terms here, but there is no peace until victory. Until you win, there is no compromising. There is no finding a middle ground. There is no
Mm.
middle way. This is like Thunderer said, you are either pregnant or you are not. You are either a Western Christian nation or you are not. You cannot have multiculturalism. It is always, these cultures do not integrate. They do not
Yeah.
peacefully live alongside you. At least Islam does not.
I think
You either win or you lose, and you need to decide to win. Yes, Thunderous?
I think multiculturalism is very much underrated and misunderstood. I think people, when they consider multiculturalism, is that some kind of homogenous pot where we're all mixing it together. I think multiculturalism was designed to break down the foundation of any moral cultural fabric in this country, and it's done it effectively.
I
Well,
can't find the missing word. Yeah.
I try to integrate, so my family does, and we we uphold the values of this country, and me, my family, and a lot of other immigrants that I know are really lovely people who try to be on the side of the truth, also call out the ugliness for where it is, and this is where I have to agree with both. On one perspective, there's you cannot compromise, because when the evil lurks around, you do not
Yeah.
let it go because it might attack someone else, right? Because if you think that you're gonna tolerate it, you it ends up knocking at your door. And what are you gonna do then? So this is what the one thing that I have to add into it. And the second point, multiculturalism. So supposedly, I can I'm a Greek Orthodox. I see so many different ethnicities coming into one church, and we are all literally in the divine liturgy, regardless of who we are, and we all are praising God. And that is
Right.
such a beautiful thing to see, that we unite in such beautiful ways. In so many different terms, we unite, right? Even in the society, when people were in London living, there were no particularly circus. There will be some dancing happening. Everyone, regardless of who they are, you will see people, girls in hijab will join into dance. You see that sort of society too. But then if you do not call out the ugliness in the society that destroying the values of this country, what are you standing for then?
Yeah.
And your silence is sort of consenting right now,
Yeah.
that you're just silent. And that's why I'm glad that some Muslims themselves have taken a step, and they're like, we need to call these things out, because some Muslims themselves are now terrified that what's going to happen. Of
Yeah.
course, people have a different idea that they are not truly the Muslim, they're Munafiq and everything. But we have to see on the other side too. So I have to be more balanced here, in my view.
Yeah. So, guys, the quote, as I just remembered it, there is no survival without victory.
Hmm.
Because if you don't win, they will crush you, they will grind you down. These are people that detest you. You need to understand this. There is no polite getting along. You need to understand that you've got a snake in the grass. They smile at you, but in their hearts they often hate you. You need to make distinctions between well integrated, culturally associated immigrants. That's someone like myself, someone like Thunderous, someone like Francis. But do understand, there is no survival without victory. You need to win. I'll make a point here just before, and I'll give you the final word, Thunderous. Look, I live in Poland. I am married to a Pole. I have been here for many years. I'll be very blunt. Poland is not a picnic, okay? I'll give you my personal view as my personal opinion based on my experience here, but the Polish government does not want me here. They would love nothing better than I get on a plane and leave and they never see me again. Not because I came here illegally, because I did not. I didn't come here on a rowboat. I have not been financially remiss. I have not committed any crimes. I have been a model resident. Okay? They just don't like foreigners, and I'm a foreigner. I am lumped in the same group as the African with a bone in his nose, living in a mud hut, wearing grass skirts. As far as they're concerned, I'm a third worlder like any other third worlder. And believe me, the law treats me differently. The law discriminates against me. This is not me pulling out the race card. The law treats me completely differently. It does
Yeah.
not like me, and it makes my life hell. Okay? I'm still here. I still am respectful to the culture. I am still understanding that I'm a guest. Now, this doesn't mean that I don't think they're a bunch of a-holes, because, yes, in that sense, they most certainly are. But I respect the country for what it is, and I am very well respected and treated by my family, by my
Yeah.
colleagues, right? It is not their fault. But at least I can understand that this culture respects itself enough to take care of its own, right? And I joked earlier when I said I came here for welfare. There is zero welfare. There is absolutely fuck all welfare here, okay? So yeah, I mean, so I don't know, but that cuts no ice here. Look, so Poland, just in case you're wondering, Poland treats foreigners like me like shit. Okay, so I'm not exactly wild about it, but here I am. I So yeah, that's just how it is. But at least it's safe. And if you need to start treating people not so well and let foreigners know that they're foreigners, that's it. However, I can learn to speak fluent Polish and get a passport, and maybe that is the route that I need to take. But I need to integrate, right? I need to earn it, and there's nothing wrong with earning those things. I may not like it, but this is their country. They have the right to do this, and I respect that. And I think they're doing the right thing because I'm safe here and my family is safe here. They can walk down the street without being raped, killed, knifed, molested, etc. And that's a price I am willing to pay. Unfortunately, in Britain, yeah, well, you know how things are. Final word to you, Thunders.
Yeah, I think in all of this, first of all, with what you're saying there, you reminded me of the scripture in Romans where the Apostle Paul talks about being in subjection to the superior authorities. So I think your concluding comment there is a good conclusion as to how it's supposed to be, that wherever you go into a certain country, as Christians, we show our reasonableness by being in subjection to the superior authorities and giving them the due respect that is demanded of us via scripture, whereas the Islamic law is basically take over the superior authorities once you've got enough power and backing in order to do so. I mean, I think Asim Al Hakim basically has said as much on his own YouTube channel, where we gave you three opportunities. We gave you two opportunities that, would you say two or three opportunities? So you can become Muslim, you can live a dhimmi, or you can
Three.
die.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's the difference between the two. So I would just want to say that's an interesting discussion. A pleasure to meet you, Francis, for the first time. I'm sure, I'm hoping that in the future we can have other interactions where we're joining with Lloyd in discussion. I know we've got one or two things planned in the future. So
Yeah, let's do this in a week or two. I have family visiting next weekend, and but Sunday evening may be an opportunity for us if you want to pitch something Sunday evening, Sunday around the same time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this was unscripted, but thank you. This has been fascinating. I'm sure has it raised any topics you'd like to continue with maybe in the future? More things we can discuss, and maybe an audience. Thank you very much for all the support. Please look. Oh, Francis, you have an announcement to make. If you can just repeat that again, your requirement.
I just have to ask, like, if anybody knows any place in London that I can rent for now. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of trouble in regards to me renting this place. I have to move out because my landlady has given me Section 21. So if anyone knows a space in London that I can rent, maybe like a room or something, so please do let me know. Unfortunately, not the best of the positions right now, but even financially because of instability of the work and stuff. So if you guys can keep me in your prayers, and also if you guys know any place that I can be there for a short while, please do let me know. So God bless, and do keep me in your prayers, guys. Thank you,
Amen.
Lloyd.
So good luck. So guys, thank you very much. That's the end. And Thunderous, thank you, man. It's always fantastic having you on. You're the adult in the room. Appreciate that. Francis, fantastic perspective as always. You're the calm one. Keeps everyone sane and grounded. So guys, thank you very much. I hope it's been enlightening, and wish you all well. God bless. And yeah, let's see sanity prevail, and hopefully Christianity comes back to Europe, right, and to the government.
Um,
Amen. Take care, guys. Good night.